You are listening to the 2 and Out CFL podcast, a proud member of the Canadian Football Podcast Network.
It's Travis Currah and it is Sheldon Jones, the 2 and Out CFL podcast, and this might be the weirdest time that I've ever turned on the microphone for the show, man. Like the past 72 to 96 hours have been wild. I don't like to start the show talking politics, but now it's just so woven into our lives that it's kind of impossible to avoid. But I've been noticing some interesting trends in Canada, man, and the way that we've been united is unlike anything I've seen in probably since Vancouver 2010. And I don't even know if I'm exaggerating there, but if we can thank number 47 for one thing, he wanted to bring a country together. I don't think he expected it to be us, though.
Yeah, it's been interesting, and I guess as long as he thinks he won, that's all that matters. Because it doesn't look like it from my eyes that he got anything.
Yeah, that's all that matters. I don't want to get too deep into the policy kind of thing here, but we're noticing some trends in Canada, and I'm not naive enough to think that while this whole buy made in Canada products thing is going to spill over into any sort of real effect to the major players in the States like Amazon, Google, all of those big players. The Super Bowl is on Sunday, and I don't plan on watching it, man. I really don't. And I don't think that all of this stuff going on right now is going to probably, cause a massive drop in ratings in Canada or anything. But I don't think I'm alone in that sentiment. I actually think that the Americanization of Canadians overall is it's sad. I think we're conditioned to believe that anything that the Americans do is automatically better than what Canadians do. And let's face it, man, we punch above our weight in almost every single thing we do, and it's time to be proud of Canada, and I'm really noticing it a lot. So we've talked off the air about it a little bit, about possibly doing a Grey Cup watch-along on Sunday during the Grey Cup or Super Bowl. So an old Grey Cup. Now, to be vulnerable, I'm afraid that it's only going to be you, me, and like 3 other people. So, I think maybe we leave it up to listeners of the pod if that's something that they would be interested in. Now, I know there's a lot of X-boycotting going on right now, so sometimes it's difficult to engage with the audience. Some people may be boycotting YouTube. So I don't even know. If this is something that you would want to take part in, send an email, send a tweet, comment on YouTube, and if there's, I think, enough people that want to take part in this and watch an old Grey Cup all together and celebrate everything CFL on Sunday, then I think that's something we could do. I think it would be fun, man.
I do too, and I think we can set up some polls on X, and even we got a Blue Sky account. I'll blow the dust off that thing and get it going too, so we can decide if this is a viable thing, and then maybe in the next day or two we could kind of figure out, we can narrow down some choices as to which Grey Cup game we watch, because there's lots of good ones.
Sheldon, that we have to come up with a classic Grey Cup. Now, this is just me off the top of my head. Edmonton, Montreal in 2005 in Vancouver. Saskatchewan, Hamilton, 1989 in Toronto. Saskatchewan, Montreal, 2009 in Calgary. But I know if that's on the poll.
Yeet. No yeet.
You know that will be a leading candidate for this watch along. But I'm trying to, just a sec, I'm looking it up right now. What would you think about watching the 1994 Grey Cup when the BC Lions beat the Baltimore Football Club off the foot of Louis Pasaglia on Super Bowl? So there's some options just off the top of my head. Classic moments in Canadian football history. But I know there's the Shop Local movement, there's the Made in Canada movement, and I know we have short memories. But man, this damn league is so special and we need to hold it dear. And I hope we don't forget how we feel in this moment. The Canadian players that get on the field, the Grey Cup that travels across this country. There's so much history there and so much to be proud of. And hey, maybe this Sunday we can have an off-season celebration regarding that. But there's just some Grey Cup options off the top of my head for some classic moments in history.
Yeah, I can think of a couple others probably too. Even Calgary, Ottawa, that overtime thriller that would have been a good one. And yeah, anyone that Winnipeg's lost over the past few, that's fine by me too. Just kidding.
Hey, actually, pretty much all the Grey Cups since COVID have been bangers.
That's true.
The one in Regina, when the Argos won, and the blocked kicks, and then the overtime game in Hamilton. The Montreal winning in Hamilton as well. Yeah, there's been some good games, even in recent history, that we could watch as well. But if this is something you want to do, let us know whichever way you prefer, and we'll look at putting some together for Sunday. Let's go into some of the news that's been going on around the league. Now, I think it's pivotal that we record this and I post it ASAP because the stuff that's coming out is fast and furious, because right now we are in the middle of, I think what some of us refer to as the legal tampering period that runs until Sunday, where teams can talk to free agents and, see where their interest is at and see if they want to sign a contract. But one of our very own amateur players, Wilfrid Laurier Golden Hawk Taylor Elgersma, went to the Senior Bowl over the weekend. Goes 4 for 7, 57 yards, including, a 43-yard completion there. But a Canadian quarterback, the first ever U Sports quarterback to be named to the Senior Bowl. Our players just keep getting better and better, man.
Yeah, it's really cool to see. And apparently a lot of the NFL scouts really like what they see, and just his arm strength, was showing off with that 43-yard completion. He looked good out there. I know he only got in there for, a series or two, but, I assume it would not only lift his draft stock up here in the CFL draft, but, he might even get looks at a later round selection in the NFL draft now.
Yeah, good for him. I love to see that. Now, we've had one player return to the CFL from the NFL already. Well, another player has sort of expressed interest in returning to the league, and that is Diontae Spencer, who had great times with Ottawa and with Toronto before going to the NFL. He spent 5 years there, and he's kind of talking about coming back to the CFL. He is 32 years old now. I just look at all the moves that even Ottawa has made lately. I don't know if there's any room for him at Ottawa right now, but I'm sure he would be a welcome addition back to some CFL team.
Oh yeah, he was excellent when he was up here before, obviously getting that shot down in the NFL, and with the kicking game or the return game kind of going away for the most part down there, it's not a shock that he might want to try to get back up here.
Now, let's go through some of the moves that have gone on, and we'll go team by team here because we are a week away from free agency officially opening, but this could be like last year where we kind of figure out all of the moves before the day, and then it's kind of anticlimactic. But this way, I guess it's kind of spread out over the week, and it's fun as well. It keeps us busy in February when it's minus 35 out there in the prairies at the moment. The BC Lions, though, beautiful Vancouver, BC. Man, I had a good time there for the Grey Cup, and the Arrow Up series has been so good. I think we're 6 episodes into it right now, and I'm just a Sean White guy, so having the access, watching him on there, it's been good, and I can't wait to see where this whole thing ends up.
Yeah, I've watched 5 of 6 episodes so far, and it really is fantastic. I really wish every CFL team would do this because I hope that they can see the value in this. Just getting to show the day in the life of these players, and it's just so interesting to see how hard they take it, and just truly does make the CFL look as big as it should be, and it's just really great content for the off season.
Oh, yeah. And I think learning about these players will bring the fans closer to the players, and that's kind of been sort of, I think, a knock on the league a little bit, being able to get to know these guys and what makes them tick. But there's so many great personalities in the league that this will help bring them out and bring fans closer to as well. There's been a lot of restructured contracts in the CFL, and Nathan Rourke of the BC Lions is one of them. Obviously, that basically means that they want to free up some money in some places. But we've seen actually a few instances of this across the CFL. In Edmonton, offensive lineman Brett Boyko was cut before he was due that off-season bonus, and then he signed right back with Edmonton, which I found kind of interesting. Keon Hatcher Sr. released by the Lions, and then they signed him back. So some interesting salary gymnastics, I think, being done this offseason.
Yeah, very interesting because it's kind of, unless he was able to get, or those players were able to get those signing bonus dollars, included or a different signing bonus, it's very strange that they would ask, because I think in Brett Boyko's, he asked to be released so that he could see what was out there. So it's not like just the team cutting him, right? So yeah, but obviously decided the grass wasn't greener, and decided to come back to the Elks. But it seems that these GMs are really trying to get as much, spread the dollars out as much as they can so they can improve their teams.
Now, they've also released receiver Alexander Hollins. And you remember the beginning of the 2024 season, Hollins was on absolute fire, including a 215-yard, 2-touchdown effort in week 3 of last season against Winnipeg. He had another 116-yard game against Hamilton a couple of weeks after that. But then after that, he kind of cooled off the rest of the season after a hot start. That being said, this guy can be a deep threat for any CFL team. And as we'll talk about as the episode goes on, the receiver market has certainly sort of reset in the CFL this offseason by a few $1,000s anyway. But he'll be, he's going to be, I think, one of those sought-after receivers in free agency.
Yeah, there was a handful of the 1A type receivers that were available, and once those guys, it kind of, the dust settled onto where those guys were going to go. Like Hollins, he's probably realistically going to be like a good 2 or 3 for a team. So if whatever team maybe missed out on Geno Lewis or Kenny the King Lawler or whatever. Maybe those other teams are going to try to see if they can get Hollins in there.
Canadian receiver Justin McInnes was a monster, led the CFL in yards last year for the Lions. He extends with the team for 2 years, as well as the Lions extending defensive lineman Marcus Moore and Jalen Edwards-Cooper, the DB, who was going to be a Rider. Did he fail his physical and then ends up getting cut and going back to BC? And now he's staying in BC. Yeah. So an interesting story for Jalen Edwards-Cooper. Now, we go to Edmonton, who without a doubt has probably been the busiest team this offseason. And I know their fans are super exciting despite losing what it looks to be Geno Lewis, who is going back to the Eastern Division. But the Elks have released kicker Boris Beatty. You remember some tough moments last year, and he came with a lot of hype and some big money coming into last season. Ends up getting let go by the Elks. It'll be interesting to see where he goes. I mean, he's got talent, he's got the leg, but that was big money. It was $200K that the Elks gave him in 2024.
Yeah, and when you're paying a kicker $200K, they have to be, better than, let's say, Sean White, better than Brett Lowther, better than these other kickers who, are tops in the league, but certainly aren't getting paid $200,000 to kick a football. So I think, obviously we know how Ed Hervey is kind of with some of his money, especially with his comments about Geno Lewis. So I'm certain he wasn't going to pay a kicker $200,000. But, it'd be interesting to see if they look to bring back a guy like Dean Faithful. He's still out there kicking the balls and getting his name out there. So
a fan favorite. See.
Yeah, even thanks for the tag in the post, Dean. He's obviously a perfect kind of player that the league would want to market. So hopefully, he does get a shot somewhere else.
Now, during, I guess, December or after the Grey Cup, I was kind of riffing that maybe Trey Ford could go to Winnipeg and join his brother. But it's the opposite. Defensive back Tyrell Ford leaving the Bombers and is going to join his twin brother Trey in Edmonton as the Elks bring him to their defense on a 2-year deal. That is a big grab by the Elks.
Yeah, he's a dominant player. We saw that last season, and just how so much he improved over the season. And it's not shocking to see him go and join his brother there. So he doesn't have to worry about picking him off anymore. He can just worry about getting the ball for him.
7 interceptions in 2024 for Tyrell Ford. What a great season he had in Winnipeg. But that just begins the list of signings for the Edmonton Elks, and another Canadian on the defense, and Royce Metier coming over from the Argos. And the Argos exodus continues as defensive lineman. Looks like Jake Seresna is going to be back in Edmonton. He was traded to Toronto, but now coming back in free agency after winning a Grey Cup. That Elks defense and that defensive line instantly improved with those 3 additions. There's no other way around it. It's crazy.
Yeah, Ed Hervey sure put a lot of work in this week, and I'm sure none of that work was done before the week, because he's a stand-up guy, that Ed Hervey. No, it's amazing. It was funny because a few years ago it seemed like there was a mass exodus of players from Calgary to Toronto, and now it seems like a lot of players are leaving from Toronto to Edmonton, and so it's kind of funny how these players and kind of gravitate to the same teams sometimes. But yeah, Edmonton got on paper really, really good this week. But we've seen that happen with a few teams in the past few seasons, and it didn't work out. So cautiously optimistic for Edmonton. I think Edmonton fans should be.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at as well. Sometimes the teams that win the offseason don't necessarily win the Grey Cup, but the efforts being put into the roster definitely inspire a fan base. Maybe it doesn't come together this year. Maybe it comes together next year. You never know. But continuity does seem to be king this way. But these players coming over, they've got talent. Another Argo offensive lineman, Gregor McKellar, looks like he's going to be joining the Elks. And a familiar face in David Beard, who was traded to Hamilton, is now back in Edmonton in free agency. Receiver Keon Julian Grant, a Canadian guy with the Montreal Alouettes. Looks like he's going to be heading to Edmonton. And also DB Emmanuel Ragumba, who spent the last few years with BC. Looks like he's going to be in Edmonton. Like, they're putting in the work, man. And one of the biggest names they were able to sign was somebody already there, extending linebacker Niles Morgan. A very good move by the Elks.
Yeah, and I think it's no secret that the Elks probably were the one team that had the most work to do this offseason with the complete regime change, and they're trying to get the fans back. And so obviously, I joked about Ed Hervey, but he's obviously putting in the work, and he's showing the fans that he's willing to do what it takes to build a team. And with the coaching staff, with all the former players, and just this back to the double E branding and all of that, I think it's a really positive steps that is happening in Edmonton, and hopefully it bears fruit on the field for fans.
The Calgary Stampeders are going to look a little bit different on the defensive line, as they've released longtime defensive tackle Mike Rose, who already has a job in Saskatchewan. They've also released D lineman James Vaughters, who is now a Winnipeg Blue Bomber. Micah Tights has extended in Calgary, signing a 1-year deal there. And the Stamps have signed receiver Tevin Jones, who spent time in Sask and went into last year without a job. The Elks bring him in, and he had a good season at the end of the day with the Edmonton Elks, and now he's in Calgary playing with Vernon Adams Jr. That's a big-bodied receiver. Good addition to the Stamps.
Yeah. The Stamps were able to pick up some weapons this week too. So, they lost a couple, but Dave's showing that he's also put in the work. I do see a lot of fans online that are still pretty disappointed with how the Stamps have been faring so far. But as a team that's not traditionally this involved in the free agency period, I think it's, a little bit different for them. And so it's going to take a while for them to see some more splashes, I think. But, Dave has been picking up some solid players so far.
Yeah, this happens every offseason. There's always one team that spends way more or is more active. And it's that team in Edmonton. Let's face it, that Battle of Alberta doesn't end on the field. Like, it exists in everyday life. So if Stamps fans see the Elks putting all this work in...
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
in the off season, they're like, what's going on? Like, those guys are doing everything and we're doing nothing. But I actually think that this move has been kind of understated a little bit. Dominic Rhymes released by the Ottawa REDBLACKS and is now a Calgary Stampeder. He had 1,011 yards last year in Ottawa, 2 touchdowns, but his best year came in BC in 2022, 1,401 yards, 11 touchdowns with Vernon Adams Jr. Being a big part of that. And last year, or 2023, that's only last season compared to the one that just ended. He only played 10 games. but he had 535 yards and 6 touchdowns in 2023. That's in 10 games. So the career that he had in BC, he slowed down a little bit in Ottawa, but now he's back with a quarterback that he's familiar with. He gets to play with Reggie Begelton. I think this is a great move for the Stampeder offense.
Yeah, when you have Tevin Jones, Dominique Rhymes, and Reggie Begelton as your 3 top receivers, probably. Not to mention you still have Mark and Michelle there, I believe.
I think he might be unsigned at this moment. Is he unsigned?
Okay.
But yeah.
But still, that's positive moves for the Stamps because, I was pretty hard on Jake Mayer. A lot of times he was not having help with those receivers dropping the balls. So, shoring up those receivers once you got a guy like Vernon Adams in there, I hate to see it as a Rider fan, but, the Stamps, they obviously needed to improve too. And so slowly but surely, it looks like they are, starting to improve. It just we'll have to see what happens when it comes to training camp and on the field and installations of the place.
Well, I'm looking at the Calgary Stampeders free agency situation up on CFL's website, and Mark and Michelle is listed as a free agent right now and not signed. So we'll see where he ends up in 2025. They've also signed the master of the dribble punt, Jeshrin Antwi, the Canadian running back. I don't think that the Stamps are going to pull that out of the hat in 2025, but I would love to see it. That's for sure. And they've also been able to bring in all CFL defensive back Damon Webb, also a former Red Black. Now we continue east as we are in Regina. Congratulations in order, I guess, for Adjo, who has been released by the Riders, and he has signed with the Indianapolis Colts there. I think a lot of people thought he had NFL talent, NFL size, and maybe there was some attitude issues in college and that kind of thing. But man, he made the most of his CFL opportunity. Fans in Regina love him. Even though, he didn't start all the time, but what he did and the impact he made off the field definitely left a mark, and now he gets to go try out the NFL. Hopefully it goes well for him.
Yeah. There's not going to be too many players that, get released to sign an NFL deal and then that weekend still stay in Regina in minus 30-degree weather to do an autograph signing. Like, he's just, a model teammate. He is the exact type of player you want to see hold the market. But I'm ecstatic that he's getting this opportunity. But I'm happy knowing that if it doesn't work out there, he certainly will be back. He's already said he's going to retire Roughriders, so we'll just see how long it takes for that retirement to happen.
Now, before we go to defense, we'll stay with the offense here. The Riders have been able to sign a Canadian receiver in Tommy Neild, who spent some time with the Argos, made some plays with the Argos. I think a solid Canadian receiver in the CFL. There was I think it was 2023 when he stepped off the sideline on a cord or something and rolled it was just one of those dumb injuries that he had, but a solid guy, I think, on special teams and in the offense. So a good addition for the Riders, but they also bring in touchdown Tommy Stevens, who Calgary Stampeder fans were calling to see more of in 2024. All they really did see him was on short yardage. So the Riders aren't going to be giving up any, you hope, 80-yard quarterback sneaks when Tommy Stevens is on their team.
Yeah, I think this is huge because coming down the stretch last year, I honestly think that the Riders' inability to convert on 3rd and 1 cost them a couple games, and in that case, cost them the West Final at home. So could have been a lot different if Shea Patterson would have been able to convert some of that, and that just goes to show Shea Patterson's not going to be on the Riders next year because of that. So I never really thought I'd be that happy about a third stringer quarterback signing, but I am amped that Tommy Stevens is a Rough Rider, let me tell you.
Okay, you have a kicker jersey in Brett Lawther. I think you need a third string quarterback jersey.
I'm not opposed. I am not opposed.
The Riders the Riders wheeling and dealing on the defensive side of the ball as well. Shane Ray is a former Super Bowl and Grey Cup winning player, and he was in Toronto while Corey Mace was there, but he had some injury issues. This guy has a motor. If he can stay healthy, he can be a force on any defense. So I think it's kind of a low risk signing by the Riders, but if he comes in and he can stay healthy, he can be quite the addition to the defense.
Absolutely. One of the things that didn't work very good on the defense in the Riders last year was quarterback pressure. So if anything that they can do along the D line to help get some more pressure and have other guys be able to stay fresh. Like, honestly, I hope that this move wasn't made so that Micah Johnson is not going to be there, because I really hope Micah Johnson still does sign with the Riders. But I love the move, to be honest. Like you said, it's low risk. I'm sure he's not getting paid that much, and if it doesn't work out, he gets injured, whatever, he's done.
At this point, it might be tough to have Mike Rose and Micah Johnson on the D-line in Sask.
Yeah, very true. Yeah.
If they got both of them, I think that would be good for that defense. They've signed defensive back Nelson Lacumbo to an extension. Remember that interception he had in the West semifinal against the BC Lions? Also, defensive back Tavon Campbell, who has spent 6 years in the NFL, 31 years old, Scarborough, Ontario born. Now he is back in Saskatchewan since he played with the Regina Rams. So he's back in a city that he is familiar with, now a Saskatchewan Roughrider. This guy is a burner. I have seen plenty of criticism of his game, but you can't take away his speed.
Oh yeah, he's very fast. To be honest, I don't know, other than the speed, how he was able to make it down the NFL. But obviously they know more than me, and so I'm hoping whatever he was able to do down there, and hopefully he still has that speed, and because if he's able to play at that caliber, at that NFL caliber, he is a ratio breaker on defense, and that's exactly what the Riders need.
So the Riders making some, I think most of them are pretty key depth moves that the team has. And again, I look to the teams that sometimes are the least active in free agency, because continuity is very important year to year with those winning teams in the CFL. Speaking of continuity, further east in Winnipeg, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers have finalized their coaching staff. Jason Hogan is the offensive coordinator of the Blue Bombers. He has spent the last few seasons as the running back coach of the team, so they've had success running the ball. He is going to be their offensive coordinator now. I guess the Riders did it temporarily with a running back coach as their OC.
It sure did.
We'll see how it goes in Winnipeg. But they've added Jarius Jackson as their quarterback coach. So many years in the CFL. That's some good knowledge, I think, to have on your sideline in Winnipeg.
Yeah, I agree. He's I think he's a great coach, and so I'm glad he's able to find a spot this season.
Drew Wolitarsky, years with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, has been released by the team. He's off to Hamilton already. They've been able to extend receiver Dalton Schoen, which his first year in the CFL, the Rookie of the Year, was an absolute beast in that offense with Zach Collaros. Of course, last year, a shortened year for Dalton Schoen. He only got to play 3 games, and that was it for the season. But in 2022, 1,441 yards, 16 touchdowns. 2023, 1,222 yards, 10 touchdowns. So, yeah, a lot of TDs in a short time for Winnipeg. So they decided to keep him around with that Bomber offense, and he's only 28 years old. So, yeah, it was good to keep him in Manitoba.
Yeah, it didn't look like they were going to be able to keep both him and Kenny this year. So obviously they went with Dalton here, but he's the guy who, whenever Zach was, or the O-line was breaking down or whatever, Zach was scrambling, he was that guy that was able to get open and get all those yards and touchdowns that way. So Kenny Lawler is, the big time possession, deep ball guy. But I just think that, Drew's more of a Swiss Army knife, and he can kind of do it all at the receiver position. So that might be why they decided to go with him. But, Bomber fans should be ecstatic to have him back. And hopefully he's able to rebound after this injury.
The Bombers able to extend offensive lineman Eric Lofton, and a few more depth signings like Canadian receiver Gavin Cobb, spent the past few seasons in Edmonton, defensive back Canadian Josh Haggerty, and also receiver Reggie White Jr. He came back to Montreal last year after a very serious injury, and I think it was his first game back. He had 2 touchdowns, so what a return for him to the lineup in Montreal, and now he's going to be in Winnipeg. I think he can still be a very valuable receiver in the CFL. So Reggie White Jr. in blue and gold in 2025. We go to the double blue. Most of the news has been the players that they've lost. That D-line is going to be completely different this year. But the past 2 years, the depth that Toronto has had at defensive line, I mean, you're not immune to all of these departures and being damaged by them a little bit, but I feel like the last couple of years that Argos team had probably 2 full starting defensive lines there. But still some players that are out there, like Jared Brinkman. I've seen reports that he might be looking at going to Edmonton. This guy's an absolute beast. Robbie Smith is a free agent. Remember his blocked field goal, right, in the Grey Cup in Regina a couple years ago. So that defensive line going to look completely different in Toronto this year. But some key extensions by the Argos. Janarian Grant, the returner, staying around in Toronto, and Winton McManus has been extended by the Toronto Argonauts. I was wondering if he was going to hit the market, but keeping him around in Toronto, definitely a good move by that defense, maybe at the expense of some other players they've had to let go.
Yeah, but I think he was a must sign. Obviously, you couldn't let him get away. Like, there's certain players that I think the Argos are going to be able to, replace, but he was not one of them. So, thankfully for the Argos fans, I'm sure they were able to get that deal done with him.
They were able to extend Grey Cup MVP Nick Arbuckle. He's staying around in Toronto, and also the most outstanding offensive lineman Ryan Hunter. This upcoming season, I think, is going to look completely different in Toronto. It's good they were able to extend guys like Coxie and Grant and McManus. So obviously they still got talent. They still got depth. But some new names we're going to have to learn in Toronto in 2025. We go to Hamilton. Two big signings here. We already know that the Ticats have restructured the contract with Bo Levi Mitchell, and they're going to need some of that money because Kenny the King Lawler is a Ticat. Now, $275,000. Tim White is getting $213,000. That's almost $500,000 locked up in two receivers, Sheldon. They better score because I don't know if they're going to be able to stop teams from scoring.
Yeah. I'm sure Bo Levi's pretty pumped to be able to add Kenny the King Lawler. I'm pumped because seeing him without that blue and gold on is awesome for me. But that's a lot of money in your receiver, right? So they're going to have to score. You're exactly right.
I guess I disrespected the defense. I know they've still got, Jamal Peters there, and they did bring in Reggie Stubblefield, a great player for the Montreal Alouettes over the past few years. 3 years. With the Ticats. Yeah. So that is a big addition to that defense. Can they stop the run? Can they pressure the quarterback? I think that might be a pretty big question mark for the defense going into the year. But, man, they're going to need to score, like I said. And being able to extend Keandre Smith, the Canadian receiver, that one is definitely going to be good for that team as well. Last year, 74 catches, 933 yards, 7 touchdowns. He's definitely got the ability to get to 1,000. He might do it as soon as this year. And running back, Ante Litre, sticking around in the CFL 2 more years in the Hammer. We go to Ottawa now. Man, I like their moves. Oh, man. We did talk about Rick Campbell being back on the team. Special teams coordinator William Fields is now their DC after spending last year with Toronto. But a shortened season 1 year ago. Adarius Pickett was a very, I think, celebrated signing in Ottawa after a great season he had in Toronto. They've extended him, so they get to hang on to him there. Linebacker Javan Santos-Knox staying in the nation's capital. Offensive lineman Jacob Ruby is sticking around there. And Devontae Dedman, obviously a weapon in the special teams. I'd love to see if they could find something for him in the offense as well. And they did at times. They were playing him at running back last year. I don't know if we'll see that as much this year. Now they've got, I guess, Stanback and Devontae Williams in Ottawa. But Jalen Acklin announcing his retirement from the CFL. If I remember correctly, there was quite a collision late last season, and he's still feeling the effects of that. And that's the dangers of football right now. So he's walking away with the game. I guess he's got a coaching opportunity there. Last year, 739 yards. I mean, over 4,100 yards, 14 touchdowns in his CFL career. We had him on the pod a couple of years ago. Now, I don't even know if this was in our YouTube era or not. If it was, I'll leave the link on here. But he was one of the funnest guys, funnest CFL players I've had a chance to talk to. A great guy to have in the league. Good for him. All the best in the future. But we lose a good one, I think, in Jalen Acklin.
Yeah, I remember listening to that episode and really enjoying it. Yeah, he seemed like a really good guy. So all the best to him in his coaching future, and good for him that he's able to still get to be involved in this game. Because sometimes injuries and stuff like that can take it away from you, but for him to be able to stick around and be able to give back, I think that's awesome.
Now, Gino Lewis looks like he's going to be an Ottawa Redblack. So, they've got Gino Lewis, they've got Justin Hardy. I really like what Ottawa has done in this offseason. Man,
yeah.
they look dangerous already from the outside looking in.
Yeah, I know it's interesting. We see a lot of teams that I think have on paper have gotten a lot better. I don't necessarily think that, any teams has gotten that much worse though off with the players that they've lost. So I think, parity is going to be there again this next year in the league. We saw that a lot this last season, but Eugene Lewis is a monster, and he's still riding that 8-game, I think, touchdown streak going right now. So we'll see if he can continue that going into next season. And any Red Black fan, there hasn't been a lot to be happy about lately. So hopefully that they can get happy here, but also they're going to remember a few years ago when they won the offseason and they won all the free agency signings and it didn't work out. So I'm sure they're pretty cautious there too.
The Montreal Alouettes have announced their coaching staff, the same as last year. They got Brian Willey joining as a defensive assistant, and they were able to extend James Letcher Jr. Of course, Letcher Jr. has the ability to be absolutely electric in the return game. So good for the Alouettes for being able to keep him on their team. But again, I mean, the start that the Owls got off to last year, the ways that they continued to win, even when Fajardo got hurt and Davis Alexander got in there, they've got a good setup there. And continuity, I know it's cliche, but it is a big thing for them. And I know they've had a change at quarterback. They do have a veteran in there with McLeod Bethel-Thompson now, but Davis Alexander probably starting the season as the starter in Montreal. I still think the Alouettes are, I think they're feeling all right going into 2025. Man, I'm getting hoarse. I think that keeps us all caught up in what's gone on in the CFL land over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's been fun just being able to realize that we may still be, a few months away from football, but it's getting closer every day, and it's just there's been a lot of news that's been in the news cycle, and that's good to see because the off season can be long, and we just can't wait for good old fashioned Canadian football to start up again.
This free agency communication window continues through Sunday, and then free agency officially opens on the 11th. And then at the end of this month, it's the CFL Invitational Combine. The CFL Combine is March 21st. The draft is about a month after that. And then, so the draft is officially April 29th. And then rookie camps will open 8 days after that. So, I know it's still a ways to go until camp and all of that fun stuff, but all of this news is definitely fun to talk about in the CFL. We'll see. The commissioner search still seems to be pretty quiet on that front, but I'm kind of hoping for a not as dramatic season. Like on the field, keep it dramatic. But some of the off the field stuff in 2024, I don't know if my blood pressure can handle it, man.
Yeah, I agree. But, it's good stuff for us to talk about.
Yeah, I guess. It keeps us employed.
Yeah, exactly.
A reminder, if you do want to do a Grey Cup watch along, let us know. I think it could be a fun thing to do on Sunday. And that's not to discount our American friends that do listen to the show. We're not straight up booing you. right now. But we're friends. That's friendly handshakes right now. It's just getting crazy out there. I hope you do understand. You can rate, review, and subscribe to Two and Out on your favorite podcatcher. Check it out on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel there. And if you go to the website twoandout.ca, you'll find the link to our Patreon. Thank you so much to our patrons that help us cover the hosting costs. It's basically a cost of a couple cups of coffee. You guys are the real all CFLers. So thank you so much for helping us out. I'm Travis Currah. He is Sheldon Jones. We will talk to you soon on Two and Out.
Thanks for listening. Find more great shows like this at CF Pod Network on Twitter.